A man kneels in the dirt of an olive grove just outside the city walls. The night air is cold. But, if you look at the historical record, thousands of men died on Roman crosses. Many faced it with stoic defiance. In a warm room, surrounded by friends. So he walks into the dark. He crosses the Kidron Valley. He steps into the dirt of the olive grove. And the vessel waiting for him in the shadows is not filled with Passover wine. The Greek scroll of Matthew describes the vessel in the garden with a single word, poterion. In the Greco-Roman world, the poterion was the drinking cup passed around the table at a banquet. You drank from it to accept the hospitality of the host, to share in the exact same portion as everyone else in the room. It is the direct translation of the Hebrew kos. But Jesus is not looking at a cup of fellowship. He is staring directly into the kos hashema, the cup of staggering. The vessel of venom that the prophets saw hovering over a rebellious world. This single word changes the entire medical reality of Gethsemane. Luke, a physician, records that Jesus is in such violent agony that his sweat becomes like great drops of blood falling down into the dirt. It is a documented clinical condition called hematidrosis. It happens when the blood vessels feeding the sweat glands completely rupture under the pressure of unimaginable psychological terror. Decades later, early Christian martyrs would walk into arenas, singing hymns, as wild animals were released. They were just ordinary men and women. He is not experiencing pre-execution anxiety. He is not having a panic attack about the Roman whip. He is looking into the cup. He sees the distilled, fermented toxicity of human history. Every act of empire-building violence, every child abandoned in the cold, every quiet, brutal choice to betray a friend for silver, every ounce of cruelty the human race has ever manufactured, has been bottled into a single, terrifying draft of holy justice. The moral fabric of the universe demands that the poison be consumed, and the Father is holding out the pitcher. The cup in the garden is not a generic metaphor for human hardship. It is the concentrated, lethal venom of a ruined world. To drink it means taking the spiritual toxicity into his own perfect body. It means the author of life absorbing the absolute, unmitigated rod of death so that humanity does not have to swallow it. He asks the Father if there is any other way to bypass the clay vessel. He asks if the poterion can pass. But the theological math of the prophets is unbreakable. The rebellion has been poured. The justice has been demanded. If the bride is going to survive the poison, the groom has to drink the cup. The silence from heaven is the answer. Yet here, the author of Life is collapsing in the dirt, begging for an alternative. He is pleading for another way. He accepts the portion. He stands up from the damp earth, his face stained with blood. And he walks out to meet the men with torches. He lets them bind his hands. He lets them march him to the judgment hall, knowing exactly where he has to go, to lift the vessel to his lips. But he does not drink it in the garden. The climax of the vintage requires a different hill. It is noon, but the Judean sky turns black. The air grows thick, heavy, suffocating. The iron is already driven through his wrists. The rough, splintered wood is grinding against his torn back with every agonizing breath. Below him, the Roman soldiers hold up a sponge. Mark's gospel records that they offer him wine mixed with myrrh. In the 1st century, this is a narcotic. It is a primitive anesthetic, designed to dull the mind, to take the sharpest edges off the excruciating pain of the cross. They press it toward his mouth. He turns his head away. He is not refusing a beverage. He is refusing an anesthetic. He knows that to drink the cup of the prophets, he must be fully awake. He must feel the absolute, unmitigated weight of the poison. If he numbs his mind, he compromises the portion. So he hangs in the dark, entirely sober, and he drinks the unseen vintage. He drinks the venom of. He is not terrified of the wood. He is terrified of what is inside the cup. The cup in Gethsemane, the empires. He drinks the venom of the corrupt courts. He drinks the venom of the quiet, brutal betrayals. He takes the kos, hachema, the boiling. toxic fury, of holy justice against human sin, and he swallows it. Every drop of rebellion, every ounce of cruelty, every shattered promise since Eden. He pulls the spiritual toxicity of a ruined world into his own perfect chest. The cup of staggering is at his lips, and he does not stop drinking until the vessel is completely, terrifyingly dry. He drains it down to the absolute dregs. And then, just moments before his heart stops, something changes. Jesus speaks from the wood. He forces breath into his crushed lungs and whispers two words, "I thirst." The soldiers lift a stalk of hyssop. They press a sponge of cheap, sour Roman military wine to his cracked lips, and this time, he takes it. He swallows the physical liquid. He can finally drink the sour wine of the earth because the other cup is finished. The vessel of wrath is empty. He has consumed the poison. He has absorbed the heat of the chema, and he has turned the cup upside down. He bows his head and gives up his spirit. The exodus is secured. The venom is spent, but the story of the cup does not end at the cross, because 2,000 years later, the ghost of that vessel is still haunting the human mind. Is not a generic metaphor for human hardship. It is a specific, ancient vessel that has been filling up drop by drop for centuries. The wood of the cross is empty, and the vessel of venom has been drained to the absolute dregs. But here is the quiet, devastating tragedy of the modern religious mind. We are a species obsessed with finding the cup. We walk through our lives carrying a phantom vessel in our hands. When we fail, when we break a vow, when we lie awake at 2 in the morning, staring at the dark ceiling as the cold sweat of our own regret settles on our skin, we instinctively reach for a cup of poison. We believe that we must drink a certain amount of misery to balance the moral scales. We isolate ourselves. We sabotage our own peace. We force ourselves to swallow the bitter, suffocating guilt, convinced that if we just punish ourselves enough, the master of the feast might finally allow us back into the room. We sit in church pews holding a cup of staggering we were never meant to touch. It is the tragedy of a legalistic mind. We build an entire religious culture around the phantom cup. We are handed a theology that feels like an unending probation period. We are taught that grace is real. It is an image so loaded with historical and spiritual weight that just looking into it nearly crushed him to death. But we must continually prove we are sorry by sipping on our own shame. We carry the heavy, unseen clay of our past mistakes, terrified that God is holding out the pitcher of wrath, waiting for us to finish the vintage before he can truly love us. This self-inflicted punishment is not holy. It is a profound theological insult. To insist on carrying your own condemnation is to look at the blood-stained dirt of Golgotha and tell the Savior that he did not drink enough. It is to look at a king who ruptured his own blood vessels in the dark, who suffocated under the weight of the chema, and suggest that he left a few drops of poison at the bottom of the vessel for you to finish. It is a lie. The cup you are holding does not exist. You are drinking from a phantom vessel. You are trying to consume a venom that the author of life already pulled into his own lungs and destroyed 2,000 years ago. The moral math of the universe has already been settled. The justice was entirely satisfied, and the poison was completely exhausted, which means that when you approach the Master's table today, there is only one vessel left waiting for you, before the Romans ever laid a hand on him. To understand what made Jesus bleed in the dark, you cannot start in the olive grove. The cup was a destiny in the poetry of a shepherd, and a king's thirst was quenched with peace. The cup became a boiling venom in the prophets, and corrupt empires were forced to swallow their own ruin. A Passover goblet was left full on a wooden table, and a new exodus walked out into the cold night. A man bled into the dirt of an olive grove, and the toxic weight of human history was pulled toward his own chest. A savior refused an anesthetic on the wood, and the blistering heat of holy justice was felt in full. A sponge of sour wine was lifted to his cracked lips, and the phantom vessel of our shame was shattered forever. The groom drained the poison down to the absolute dregs, and the bride walked away clean. One thread, one story. But here is the part I keep coming back to. The silence in the garden. The moment when the author of life collapses, under the crushing weight of the Kas Hashema, begging for another way. And the heavens say nothing. He is staring at the fermented, lethal toxicity of our own quiet betrayals and profound failures. It is not an abstract metaphor. It is a physical, suffocating venom. You have to go back. You have to trace a single, haunting image that winds its way through the entire Hebrew text, and he takes the heavy clay in his hands anyway. If you are in a season where your past feels like a bitter liquid, you are constantly forced to swallow. Golgotha is a place to stop. You do not have to keep drinking your own guilt to prove you are truly sorry. The cross is not a demand for your ongoing punishment. It is the announcement that the vintage is dry. You are holding an empty ghost. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted from trying to pay a debt that is already gone. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who drank the venom of a ruined world into his own lungs walk with you into the light and seat you at a banquet table where the only cup left to pour is overflowing with peace. It is an object that appears in the poetry of shepherds, in the warnings of wild prophets, and finally, in the trembling hands of a Savior. The answer changes how you read everything that happens from Thursday night to Friday afternoon. Heavy with the smell of crushed olives and damp earth. His closest friends are sleeping 20 yards away, their cloaks pulled tight against the chill. And the place to start the search is not with poison or wrath. The place to start is with an inheritance. In the ancient Near East, when a king or the head of an extended household hosted a banquet, the distribution of wine was a matter of intense social order. You did not pour your own drink. You sat at the table, and the host held the heavy ceramic pitcher. He determined exactly what went into your vessel, and how much. What went into your cup was your assigned portion for the night. And when you lifted that clay goblet to your lips, you were accepting what the host had provided. You were agreeing to your place at his table. The ancient Hebrew texts take this physical reality and turn it into a theological blueprint. The Hebrew word is kos. It literally translates to a cup, but its meaning stretches far beyond a piece of pottery holding crushed grapes. In the minds of the biblical authors, your kos is your assigned destiny. It is the lot cast for your life. In a world without guarantees, your kos was your ultimate reality. If the master of the house poured out peace, you drank peace, completely oblivious to the fact that men with torches and swords are already marching up the Kidron Valley. If he poured out prosperity, you drank prosperity. You see this architectural use of the word all over the poetry of David. When David wants to describe a life of absolute security, he does not point to his palace or his military victories. He writes Psalm 16, declaring, "The Lord is the portion of my inheritance and my kos." When he pictures sitting at a banquet surrounded by his enemies in Psalm 23, he doesn't just say his thirst is quenched. He says, "My cup overflows." You can almost smell the scene, the deep, rich scent of the vintage, the heavy, cool clay in your hands, sweet, dark wine pouring relentlessly from the master's pitcher, filling the goblet, rising to the brim, and spilling over to stain the wooden table. It is an image of profound, unmerited blessing. The kos is not just a container for liquid. It is the boundary line of your existence. When you drink it, you are consuming the destiny God has authored for you. For centuries of Israel's early history, the cup is the ultimate symbol of covenant intimacy. It is the toast at the wedding feast between Yahweh and his people. But if you keep reading the Hebrew scriptures, the man on the ground is breathing hard. He is sweating. He is bleeding through his pores, tracing this single word through the centuries. You notice a disturbing shift in the text. As the nation fractures, as the kings turn to foreign gods, as the temple courts fill with the smoke of illicit sacrifices and the blood of the vulnerable, the imagery begins to warp. The wine goes dark. The sweet scent of the vintage turns rancid. The poetry of the shepherds gives way to the warnings of the prophets, and the cup of blessing becomes a vessel filled with something entirely different. Jeremiah stands in the dust of Jerusalem. The narrow streets are loud. The air is thick with the smoke of cheap incense burning to foreign gods. The altars of Baal are built right into the hillsides. And the city is drowning in its own corruption. And the voice of God gives the prophet a terrifying, visceral command. He tells Jeremiah to take a cup from his hand. But this is no longer the cup of Psalm 23. This vessel is not overflowing with peace. This cup is foaming. It is boiling. It is filled to the brim with poison. God tells Jeremiah to walk to the kings of the earth, to make them drink, to force the surrounding nations to swallow the violent vintage they have spent centuries pouring out for themselves. The crimson drops falling like heavy rain into the ancient soil. And, in the dark, he asks his father a single, desperate question. They drink. They stagger. They vomit. They fall to the dirt and do not rise. You can almost feel the burning in the throat. You can hear the clay shattering on the stone pavement. You can see the rulers of the ancient world collapsing under the weight of their own distilled wickedness. Isaiah sees the exact same vessel. He stands before a ruined, burning Jerusalem and delivers a devastating diagnosis. He looks at a broken people and says they have drunk the cup from the hand of the Lord. He says they have drained the goblet to the absolute dregs. They have swallowed every bitter drop. The wine of the prophets is not a beverage. It is a judgment. God takes the violence the nations have committed, the injustice they have celebrated, the idolatry they have embraced, and he distills it into a liquid. He bottles the rebellion. He ferments the cruelty, and he pours it out. When humanity rejects the author of life, they do not get an empty cup. They get a full one. They get to drink the exact, unvarnished reality they demanded. This is the cup of staggering, the cup of reeling, the cup of ruin. The Hebrew prophets use this image dozens of times. It becomes a relentless drumbeat in the text. Every time a king orders a slaughter, the cup fills. He asks if there is any way to pass the cup. Most people assume the cup he is talking about is death. Every time a widow is crushed in the courts, the vintage ferments. Every time the temple becomes a marketplace of exploitation, the liquid turns darker, thicker, more lethal. It is a terrifying, inescapable theological math. The judgment of God is not an arbitrary lightning bolt from the sky. It is a harvest. But there is a specific phrase the prophets use to describe this terrible vessel. A specific combination of Hebrew words that appears over and over again in the scrolls of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. It is a label that reveals exactly what kind of venom is waiting inside the clay, and it is the only way to understand what is waiting for Jesus in the garden. Read the English translations of Jeremiah or Isaiah, and you will see it called the cup of wrath or the cup of staggering. It sounds like a terrifying, abstract metaphor for divine anger. But when you look at the scroll in its original language, the imagery becomes much darker and much more physical. The phrase the Hebrew prophets use is kos ha-chema. Kos, as we have seen, is the cup, the assigned portion, the destiny handed down by the master of the feast. But it is that second word, chema, that holds the true horror of the vessel. In our English Bibles, chema is almost always translated as wrath, fury, or anger, but its root traces back to a physical, visceral sensation. They assume it is just a poetic way of describing the physical agony of the Roman cross waiting for him the next morning. Chema means heat. It means burning. And in several places in the Old Testament, it is used to describe a very specific kind of heat. It is the word used in Deuteronomy chapter 32 to describe the poison of serpents and the deadly venom of cobras. It is the burning toxicity that destroys a body from the inside out. So the prophet holds a cup of venom. When you understand Shema as a toxic, burning poison, the entire theology of the prophets snaps into focus. Psalm 75 describes the Lord holding a cup of foaming wine, heavily mixed with spices, and forcing the wicked of the earth to drain it down to the dregs. The spices were not for flavor. In the ancient world, specific spices and herbs were added to wine to increase its intoxicating, lethal potency. It was a chemical cocktail designed to break the mind before it killed the body. This completely changes how we view divine judgment. The wrath of God is not an arbitrary emotional outburst. It is the terrible, holy justice of allowing humanity to consume the exact toxicity they have produced. God takes the oppression of the poor, the violence of the empires, the betrayal of the vulnerable, and the quiet, daily rebellion of the human heart, and he distills it. He lets the venom ferment, and the cup of Kema becomes the ultimate vessel of justice. The leather whips tearing into his back, the rough iron spikes driven through his wrists, the slow, public suffocation under the brutal Judean sun. The moral fabric of the universe demands that the toxicity of human sin be consumed. Someone has to drink the poison. This is the vessel that the prophets saw. This is the cup that hovered like a shadow over the ancient world. And this is exactly what is waiting on a wooden table in an upper room in Jerusalem. On the night before the crucifixion, 13 men recline on cushions around a low wooden table in an upper room. The air is warm, thick with the smell of roasted lamb, sharp bitter herbs, and the heavy smoke of oil lamps. It is Thursday night. It is the Passover. It is the oldest, most sacred script of the Jewish year. The meal has a strict liturgy. It has a rhythm. Every movement means something. At the center of the ritual are 4 cups of wine. They are anchored in the 4 promises God made to Moses in the book of Exodus. I will bring you out. I will deliver you. I will redeem you. I will take you as my own people. 4 promises. 4 cups. They pour the first cup, the cup of sanctification. They drink. They pass the bitter herbs. They pour the second cup, the cup of deliverance. They drink. They break the dry, unleavened bread. Jesus takes the third cup, the cup of redemption. He holds the heavy clay vessel, and the cross was undeniably terrifying. It was designed by an empire to break the human spirit before it broke the body. He looks at the men in the dim light. He takes a millennium of tradition and rewrites it in a single sentence. He says, "This cup is the new covenant in his blood." They pass it around. They swallow the dark wine. And then, something shocking happens. Something that breaks the liturgical script. They sing a hymn. They stand up. They walk out the door. They step into the cold night air of the city streets. They do not drink the 4th cup. The 4th cup is the cup of consummation. It is the cup of praise. It is the climax of the entire Passover meal. The final promise, where God says, "I will take you as my people." You do not skip it. You do not leave it sitting full on a wooden table. To leave the 4th cup undrunk is to leave the Exodus unfinished. But Jesus walks away. He leads his disciples out of the room, down the stone steps, and out of the city gates. He is not forgetting the ritual. He is relocating the table. He knows exactly what he is doing. He knows that before he can drink the final cup of the new covenant, before he can finalize the ultimate Exodus, another cup has to be dealt with. An older vessel, a cup that has been filling up drop by drop since Eden, a cup that cannot be consumed.